Welcome. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Cult of Recreationalism podcast. I'm your host, Sean Lake, and today on the show we have Derek Price. Derek, it is great to have you on the show.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, dude. We've been friends for so long, and it's kind of funny. We've had thousands of hours of conversation. So, I was talking to my wife. She's like, "What are you and Sean going to talk about?" I'm like, "I don't know," but whenever we start talking, it just rolls to whereverville. So here we are.
This will definitely be a roll to whereverville. But for folks who have not yet met Derek or don't follow him on social media and understand the faction and all the great things that we're going to cover today, let me paint the picture here briefly. Derek is a former tight end in the NFL for the Detroit Lions back during the Barry Sanders heyday, also known as the Derek Price heyday. He is a doctor, graduated with honors from the Life University College of Chiropractic Medicine, which means he can fix your broke ass. He is the founder and head coach of the Faction Foundation, and he's an OG member of the Sealfit coaching community. He's an Ironman finisher, and he's been the CEO of hospitals, and he's founded several orthopedic clinics, which is really good for someone who's got bum knees like myself. You've heard us talk about Sealfit here on the podcast before. Well, Derek was right there at the very beginning. So, Derek, let's talk, man.
Well, dude, let me re-level set for your listeners. It sounded like I had a pretty cool intro, but let me tell you the reality of my time in the NFL. I was the lucky to be there guy, right? Sean, check this out. You'll love this story. So I walk into a card shop after my first season, and I'm like, I'm going to get a Derek Price card and impress my wife. And then I walk in and I go, "Hey, man, looking for a Derek Price rookie card." The dude over the counter, total card nerd, right? Runs a card store, knows everything. He looks at me, he's like, "Who? Never heard of that dude." Immediately, ego, boom, deflated, right? And I was like, it hit me so hard, I was like, "Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and I was wondering if you," and he's like, "There's a bucket of free shit over there. If you can find whoever it is you're talking about, just take it." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we're good." So we're good. I'll let him know. I bailed. But yeah, man, people are like, "I remember you from the NFL." I'm like, "Dude, no, you don't." I appreciate you saying that, but Barry Sanders.
Hold on now. Give me the years that you played, because I believe, if I remember correctly, you played for 2 years, and then and there was some injury stuff. But what 2 years did you play? And then we're going to stop talking about that, because I want to get back to the old days. What?
96-7, and I broke my neck, and they put a bunch of plates and screws and stuff in there, and said, "Hey man, good luck. Go life pivot." Massive life pivot right there. "Hey, you were going this way, and good thing you graduated, because now you got to go that way." So,
yeah. So, all right, let's dive into this then. Actually, we're going to start here. You played those 2 seasons in the NFL, and you were part of the Detroit Lions during one of their, everyone was watching that team. Mm-hmm. Because Detroit's, they've had a bit of a troubled history in the NFL. They have not had, they've had more L's than W's. Let's just put it that way. But you were part of that team that was actually a spark of hope. That was these guys could do some stuff. They got this guy Barry on the team. But you got snaps during those 2 years. You caught passes. It's not, it was before tight ends were cool, admittedly.
Totally, dude. I was way in front of my era. I was like the smallest tight end in the NFL. And I was like, "You guys should throw me the ball." And they're like, "Tight end block, put your head down, hit people."
Back then, that's right. There, you didn't have a Gronkowski or Travis Kelce to just hype the world. It was really more of a glorified outside blocking position. Yeah. And every once in a blue moon, you'd be the guy who's open.
Dude, Sean, check this out. We played a game, and I can't remember who it was. Let's just say Minnesota, and we're watching film after the game. And I don't know if anybody's played football, you know how you watch film after the game, and the whole team watches it, and the coach goes through every play, and this is good, bad, whatever. And there's a consistent amount of plays where nobody on Minnesota Vikings even bothered to cover me. It was as if I was invisible and didn't exist. I'm literally running down the field yo, right here, dog. And so I make this comment during film, Remember, the whole team. Black room, coach, laser pointer. This is when we still had film, as crazy as that sounds. And I'm like, dude, I never get the ball. I'm open all the time. Boom, film stops.
Spotlight.
I was like, like shrinking in my chair. I was like, I wonder why he's stopping that. Head coach is like, who said that? And I was like, Price. And he's like, let me explain to you why that is, son. He takes his laser pointer and he's like, that's Barry Sanders, that's Herman Moore, that's Brett Perryman, that's Corey Schlesinger, that's Johnny Morton, and I still don't know who you are when I walk by you in the hallway. That's why you don't get the ball. And I was like, good copy, coach. But dude, this speaks to my man's character right here. Being the worst tight end on the team, I sat next to the best running back, right? Barry Sanders. So I had the silver lining. I could sit next to him every day. A couple plays later, I knock somebody out of the way, and Barry runs. Everybody's like, good job, Barry, good job, Barry. And he's like, no, that was good job, Price. Like, back to the coach, and in the NFL, there's different rules. Like, Derek Price talks to a coach, boom, this squashed my head. Barry Sanders says something, he's like, the sun comes up in the west. And they'd be like, yeah, it does, Barry. Yes, it does. So, like, the coach almost had to be like, good luck, Price. Boom, on to the next thing. That was my moment, the hot glory sun, brother.
Check.
Yeah.
Got that guy out of the way. Got the job done.
Got him.
Dude, so I mean, rewind a little bit though. Take me kind of pre-NFL. Like, how did you get into football? What was the story growing up? Because I know a little bit, but I think the folks out there maybe don't know. Like, hey, where were you raised, and under what conditions? Because very, very few people play football at the highest level in the world. A lot of people play football when they're 8 years old. I mean, I just had flag football practice with my son Sebastian yesterday. It was amazing. Where that goes from an 8-year-old to an 18-year-old to a college graduate into the NFL, like, that is a massive shrinking of the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even know what the numbers are, but, dude, there's like 30 teams and 50 active people per team. So you're talking about a pool of 1,500 people. It's never bigger than that, because to get into the NFL, you have to push somebody out, right? So it is hard to get in. There's not new job openings every year unless other people could quit. So to give you the truncated version of what could be like a very long story, I had the misfortune of my dad passing away when I was very young. I was 7, and I was the oldest boy in the house. My mom never remarried. She was a school teacher, not a lot of money. So my babysitters became sports, and literally she would sign me up for a soccer league and a baseball league at the same time, or 2 baseball teams at the same time, so that I had somewhere to go after school. So instead of like going home and sitting there latchkey, I get out of school at like 3 o'clock, and I'm talking like when I was 7 years old. So I'm talking like by the 2nd grade, I was on like at least 2 sports teams at a time. And I didn't know that it was for babysitting until later on in life. My mom's like, we saved a lot of money that way that we didn't have. And I'm like, you were brilliant. So I found
also
coaching,
you're playing with all your friends. Like I'm watching
my
son
son
do this. Like,
I just love it.
Like,
We
he's
didn't have
stoked. We
didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have Nintendo. Like, that didn't even exist back then. Like, Pong probably hadn't even coming out yet, Sean. Like, I mean, we're talking like, I was born in 72, bro. So it was a minute.
Yeah.
But I think it really, to get to your question, it built the faith and trust in me that if I listened to mentors, coaches who advised me, who I trusted, put in the work and followed their plan and playbook, that it would lead me to the next level. So Pee Wee led me to high school. Listening to him got me to the varsity team. Varsity team got me to a scholarship, scholarships, All-Americans, and all these other types of awards. Full ride to University of Iowa. And then actually, yet again, after Iowa, I go home, didn't declare for the draft, didn't declare for the combine, turned down pro days. Football was a means to an end to some degree. I go home and it was actually another mentor.
You didn't think you were going to play in the NFL. To be clear, you
totally
did a full ride scholarship to Iowa. Mm-hmm. You're in a quality Division I program.
Yeah.
Big but 10. You didn't think that there was a road into the NFL, so you weren't like, I'm going to register for the draft. I'm gonna go in and do the combine and do all the things.
Didn't run for anybody. Didn't show up at pro days. Didn't do any of that stuff. I was interested in I'm here. I didn't have any money to go to college, and so football was like a means to an end. It was like my work study job, right? I was in love with the locker room and the people, and the grind, the game itself was the byproduct that we kind of had to show up and do. Honestly, I know it sounds weird to fans or whatever, but it's what it is.
No, I think there's something to unpack there about culture and community, and what you really responded to. Like, you didn't walk away from it until like you got what you needed out of it, but you also contributed to it.
For sure, yeah. And like my roommate was a better tight end than me at Iowa, and he was drafted early third round and went on and played for 4 or 5 years. So like 2 tight ends, and that's what really started, Iowa as tight end U now. And I was like in the early stages of, one of the people that made it in the NFL as a tight end. And then we just had, tons of tight ends come out after us and do much, much better. Right. But I go home and I'm looking for a job. I graduate in December, and Chuck Long, one of my football coaches, which was, if the name rings a bell, he was the runner up to Bo Jackson for the Heisman Award when he came out of college. Calls me up and says, "Hey, Derek, listen, I think you're just missing a major opportunity. You're going to regret it the rest of your life. Will you please just come back to Iowa, run for some of the pros, and if it works out, great. And if not, like, you close the door, like, never wondering what would have."
Did he think that you were like done with football, walking away, and he had to reach out to you because he saw that?
I'm back in Arizona, right? The world was still big back then, Sean. Like, cell phones, Instagram, social media, texting didn't exist.
Right.
So like I graduate Iowa in December. They start getting ready for the combines and stuff like that. After that, draft happens in March, April. Like I packed up and moved back to Arizona, and I'm like filling out applications and looking for jobs, right? And he calls me on my home phone and he's like, "Hey man, I just really want you to come back here. Like, stop what you're doing, put your life on pause, come back and do this. You'll just regret it if you don't. And I think that there's some doors that'll open for you. You have whatever the intangible is." And so I trust him, and I go back and I run for some people, and I was too late to be declared and signed to draft day, but on the first day of the draft, I signed with Detroit Lions, and the rest is history from there.
And I mean, you took the best paying job you could possibly get out of college.
Yeah, it was the best gig. Outside of like running drugs from Mexico, like it was about as good as you can get. Right?
If you want to stick to, job opportunities, man, if I just mule from Mexico, I could probably earn, low mid 6 figures, or I could go play in the NFL, and I could be the world's the NFL's, what do you call yourself, the worst tight end? I don't buy that for a minute. But you go and play in the NFL, all of a sudden, like, oh my God, like I'm making a rookie contract. There's a benefit structure. There's so many things behind that machine, even in the mid late 90s. It's funny because like you're like, oh, this is a curveball. I wasn't expecting this.
Totally.
I played football my whole life, but I was done with that. I have a similar feel. Like I walked away from snowboarding when I got my college degree, and I was like, I'm done snowboarding.
Yeah.
And not that I was going to be done enjoying and appreciating and loving the sport, but like as a pro snowboarder, like I was done. I was old for that stuff. I was like, okay, I'm done. But then the industry opened its doors to me, and this whole other world of marketing that brought me to Encinitas to eventually meet you. So, hey, man, world's funny that way.
Dude, it's crazy. Is like, of all the things we do growing up, and as popular as football is, like when it ends at high school or college or the pro, there's no like football after that. Like you could pack up with your bros and go snowboard tomorrow.
Yeah,
like,
I do.
I'm not like, "Sean, let's strap up some pads. I'll meet you in the park and let's just go play some football." Like,
I'm gonna lay your 53-year-old ass out.
It's not a thing. Like, it's weird, man, isn't it? Like football is like, hey, you're done. Yeah, then that's a hard wrap. Like nobody goes back to it.
You can play catch. That's going to be about the extent.
Play a little bit of catch. That's about it. But yeah, man.
It's a high consequence game. That kind of tracks. That makes sense a little bit. So you're going into your second season. You play your rookie season. You get a little notoriety with the coach. You're playing, on the Lions, and you go into year 2. What happened with the injury? Like how did that come about?
Well, so to be crystal clear, I'm credited for the 2 seasons. I played the first year, and I broke my neck with 4 games to go in my first season. But I only knew it as shoulder pain and numbness and tingling. And like I said, I was at that like bottom rung. And back then, like, you don't make the club sitting in the tub. So like as soon as you're like mildly injured, they're like expendable, out, you in. So I didn't say anything. Self-medicated, figured out on my own. all the things that you don't want to put on a podcast took place. But at the end of the day, like I got through the next 4 games, right? And like you can see, my last game was a Monday Night Football game against the Niners at Candlestick when they played at Candlestick. And I was playing a tight end fullback position, and I'm lead blocking on Ken Norton Jr. And we're just smashing faces, and every time I hit him, my arm goes numb and it like drops, and I can't use it for like the next 15 seconds because it's just electricity on fire.
Yeah, and then you like get it back up.
And I'm like, I'm going back to the huddle, like holding my arms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't call that play again. And they're like, let's run it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the gods hate me. Like, no, give it to somebody else. Like it was like just abuse, like one of those videos where you see a dude in the surf get smashed by a wave and he stands up and just like smashed by a wave. It was that, man.
Except you're just like, but this is my life. But this electricity feeling can't be good.
I was like, I'm going to pass out on national TV. Like, my eye was like twitching. I'm like, so.
We're fine. We're fine.
Dude, we should be good. We should be good. So I get on the plane, we're flying home, and they just pass me by, and they're like, hey, Price, no injuries. You need to stay for a health check. Are you good? And I'm like, all good, boss. And they're like, cool, here's your medical eval. You're good. Go home. We land in Detroit. I hit a plane. I'm back in Phoenix. Off-season happens. My injury caused on my 265, like got a 19-inch right arm. By the time I go back to camp in like March, I had signed another contract, multi-year deal. Like boom, rookie went to like, hey man, this kid played in every game. He's on the field doing what he's supposed to do. Now, like, here's a bigger deal. Like, you're gonna be here for a while deal, right?
Yeah, 3-4 years. Like, going in your mid-20s.
You're part of the mix for the next. You're not Barry Sanders, but you're in the mix. You're gonna be around. We know you. You're on special teams. You also played as tight end. Like, you're gonna be here.
Yep.
And dude, I show up at camp and I walk in the doors and the trainer's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I had a 19-inch right arm and like an 11-inch left arm, because all the nerves and everything going into my shoulder and arm were just crushed. There was bone and disc and all kinds of garbage sitting on top of them, so it didn't work, and my arm just would shake like this. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm good to go. So they were like 911'd it, dude. Right out to like back to Los Angeles, sitting in an MRI tube and spine surgery. And another life pivot happened during my spine surgery, but yeah, that was it. I go back to try, I'm like, hey, I'm going to rehab from this and play. And, the coach.
You have a contract.
Yeah. So I have a contract. So I go back. Lloyd's of London, which is the insurance group, is like, hey, you can't ever play this game again because you smash people with your face and you have plates and screws. You're too big of a liability. And then to his credit, the head coach calls me in and is like, man, you've done everything that we've ever asked you to do, and I love you. So here's the deal. You have multiple years on your contract. We'll put you on injury reserve. You can fly around with this, ride around with this, stand on the sidelines, live this life. You'll never, ever play this game again. Ever. But I will keep you on injury reserve and hold to the promise we made you, which is the contract. Or you can do whatever you want. And I was like, I don't do entourage. I love you. But like, it happened like in 10 seconds. I was like, I can't play. No, I was like, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm out. And within like 12 hours, was back on a flight back in Phoenix, and football was done. That fast. Yeah.
Do you ever regret that not doing the entourage thing, not like being a part of the support team, like not being like a part of call it the coaching era, like being there for that emotional, mental support? Or did you just feel like you'd be a drag on the team?
I'm never a fan of hanger-oners or tag-arounds. Like either grab an oar and row, or make space in the boat for somebody that can, right? Like be that guy or don't be that guy, but make a decision. So I just made the decision, and my life had always kind of gone that way. So I make the decision, like, can I contribute to this team? He's like, you're going to fly around with us and you can shake hands and they'll take your picture. I'm like, yeah, it's not contribution. That's parasite. Okay, I'm out. Boom. And just hard left and went back to Arizona.
And I'm sure the coach, kind of gained a ton of respect for you on that
Sure.
one. But at the same time,
Matter of fact, Baltimore Ravens picked up my rights, and my agent was like, do you want to just sign this contract? You'll get a bonus, and then they'll figure out you're injured. And I was like, nah, man, it's unethical. So people are like, who'd you end with? And I was like, it's kind of Baltimore, but unofficially. Weird, right?
Yeah.
Like your rights. Somebody signed my rights?
It's funny, but like that's part of it, because like they don't know, right? So they're willing to pay some money on the off chance that you rehabilitate and re-enter, because that stuff can happen all the time. Mm-hmm. And Detroit, they didn't know. They were like, They knew enough to know that you'll never play again.
Yeah, pretty much. And listen, it was an amazing chapter. It was awesome for what it was. I would do it all over again, knowing that I would have the injury and everything. I'd play the life out exactly how I played it, and I'd still make the same decision to pivot where I pivoted, because like life is just a series of doors, and like I'm always looking forward, and I'm not like bypassing. I'm totally present. I was present in the football, but when they're like, you can't do this anymore, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find the next thing to be present. I don't know what it is, but I'm jumping out of the airplane, no parachute. I'll figure it out, and off.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. And I'm sure there's some people that are going to hear that and just question it and be like, wait, why didn't you take the deal? That's millions of dollars. Like, you left millions of dollars. And it's like, well, it wouldn't have been the right millions of dollars. It wouldn't have been the right opportunity. And you got to live with yourself. Not to mention, you don't want to hit pause on your life. Like, if those are opportunities that you're missing building your future equity, like whether it's, learning the skill sets with a business administration degree to enter into the hospital space, to go into like starting your chiropractic practice, going back to school, like those are all things that maybe wouldn't have happened or you would have paused. So good on you, man.
Yeah. I mean,
and that injury, like you broke your neck, man.
Yeah, it hurt.
That's pretty serious.
There's a lot of sleepless nights.
It hurt for multiple games afterwards.
It hurt for a long time. Yeah, I played 4 games with it, and
I heard your bench press was like 315 on your right side, but only about 125 on your left.
Dude, it's funny. Like I was at and here's a cool thing I didn't know about you guys in California. When they sent me out to the hospital in Los Angeles, I check in to go see this world-class spine surgeon. My agent set it up. The team set it up. I was going to like the top guy. And I go onto a floor with a security guard that I didn't know existed because it wasn't like listed on the elevator. And I'm like, oh, you guys have like VIP floors at hospitals? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, nobody knows about this. He's like, that's why they're called VIP. I was like, interesting. I go into the waiting room and it's me, Shaquille O'Neal, and Lottie Divac from the Lakers. And I was like, what's up? So Lottie, I can't understand a word he says, so it's super awkward handshaking because there's nobody in between us. There's no his people, my people, like just us.
No, you
guys. And then he goes back, like in this waiting room that had, dude, like a buffet of like shrimp and sushi and steak, and I was just like, it was like George Costanza from Seinfeld when he finds the model party. I was like, what is happening, dude? Nobody will ever understand this. And so now I'm talking to Shaquille O'Neal for about 40 minutes, and like, I knew like 9 words that he said. He's like, hey, bro, it's gonna be a bit. And I was like, dude, I didn't know what you just said. But like, you're so awesome. You're such a, shook my hand and he just was like consumed my arm. I was like, nice to meet you.
All 7 foot, just monster of him.
This monster, dude. And, but it was actually that spine surgeon that life pivoted me from there. Like when he showed me what was wrong with my neck, he's like, man, you should have went to a chiropractor because your neck was straight. If it was like this, you don't have this injury. Should have went to a chiropractor. And I kind of shit on it. And I was like, what are you going to rub? I didn't know anything about it. Chicken blood in my ears or a crystal or what? I don't know what they do. Yeah. And he looked at me. He's like, that's a very naive statement. Walked out of the room. So like when I left Detroit, I was like, what is this chiropractic thing that this surgeon was like, if that, then this. So when I healed up and I left Detroit.
He was literally suggesting that had you done routine chiropractic visits, that you would not have sustained the injury? Was that his statement overall?
100%.
Or was it after
100%.
you sustained the injury, if you just started a routine, it would have helped you? Which one was it?
Definitely pre. So without getting like uber technical, and if you're not watching, it'd be hard to follow, but if you look at me from the side, you have a curve in your neck that's about 35 degrees. It's like this. And if I press down on a hand that's curved, it can absorb shock, right? It can absorb shock. Okay. My neck was what's called a military neck. It was just straight up and down. So when I push down, there's nowhere for that shock to go. So just boom, it blew out. So he was like, yeah, man, if you went to a chiropractor and they restored your curve, your neck absorbed shock, you could have taken those hits, you wouldn't have broke it. And I was like, whatever. Had no idea what he was talking about. Kind of poo-pooed on the idea. And he looked me down and he's like, dude, that's super naive, and walked out of the room. And I was like, I just offended the dude that's going to cut me open shortly. And so, but it hit so hard, like I can still tell you what he's wearing, the cologne he was wearing, the room I was in, where I was sitting. It was one of those moments like profound, like I didn't know I was going to become a chiropractor, but it sparked my curiosity. So when the NFL was over, I was like, there's a chiropractor down the road. I'm just going to walk in and be like, what do you do? And that started that chapter.
Fascinating. I mean,
Weird,
literally
right?
fascinating how that exchange, right? Because he may be, if he says nothing, and it's like, oh, you don't know what a chiropractor is, okay, and he just walks out. Like, you might never have gotten that hint, but because you offend him, he's just looking at you like, man, dude, this is your life.
Yeah,
Like, you should know, like, you're a professional athlete. You should know about these tools at your disposal to help you achieve greatness.
Yeah, for sure.
Wild.
And
So
that chapter of my life started right there.
So you go home, you don't re-sign the contract, the Ravens get your rights, the NFL is effectively done, but you're a forward-thinking individual, and you have been, your whole life. And all of a sudden, the seed's planted. Tell me, like, you walk into a chiropractic office, and just
so the timeline is so absurd when I look back on it. But Sean, you've just known me for a long time, so to you it makes sense. Dude, I get back, I walk in, I have one conversation with this guy. I'm looking around, I'm like, you're running a weight room, and you're like a physical therapist, and people are healthy and they're happy, and they get to call you doctor. Like, sign me up. How do I do this? Yeah. And he's like, here's a phone number of Palmer College in Iowa. Call him and see what you need to get in. And I had just graduated University of Iowa. So I call him. Dude, imagine how old we are. I called them. I didn't go online because there was no such thing as online. I called them. And they're like, hey, you need to do a couple more science classes. You didn't have it in your curriculum to be able to get in here. But you get those science classes and we'll accept you. So then I call an apartment complex in a place called Bettendorf, Iowa, which is a tiny little Quad City area. Never been there before, which is where Palmer College is in Davenport. And I'm like, hey man, I need to rent a room. How much are they? And they're like, $340 a month. I was like, fax me the contract. I sign it. And I tell my wife, who I just got married to like 3 or 4 months before, we're moving to Iowa. And she's like, let's go. And we loaded up our truck. And this is all within 3 weeks of leaving the NFL. I'm driving back to Iowa. And I did a couple of organic chem 1, 2, physics 1, 2, some of the science-based stuff I needed to get in. And then a year later, after doing some of those undergrad classes that I needed to get in, I go into 4 years of chiro school.
Wow. You go through all 4 years, so call it 5+ years up in Iowa, and you knock out your degree. But Arizona's home. So was that it? You just said, I'm going to go set up a practice, or I'm going to go become a chiropractor under another person's practice and then kind of establish myself? Like, did you have like a forward thought on where the business part was going to go, or was it, I want to go heal people now?
So I actually, once I got all my prereqs done and I was signed up to start at Palmer, which is in Iowa, I was just looking outside one day, and this is, again, quick pivot. And I was like, I don't think I can live 4 years under a gray sky in the Midwest anymore. So I was like, there's a school in Atlanta. That place looks dope. So I got in my car and drove from Iowa to Atlanta and called my wife, and I was like, we're moving. And she's like, cool. Drove back, packed up, moved to Atlanta, went to Life University in Georgia. And I got to see the sun, and it was beautiful, and I loved it, and I had a great time. And 4 years go by, and I had made enough money in the NFL where I didn't have to work. I could really focus on school. So I got like really, really deep and curious and inquisitive into all the different clubs and tricks and trades and applications and practices, and found my niche in like a higher level neurology-based practice. So when I graduated, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go do like post-stroke victims and work on like heavy level neuro work. And I went out and worked with Dr. Pococo, which is, he works with a lot of NFL teams right now, and Dr. Azzolino, in San Francisco, and ran their neuro clinic for a while, and then just decided the pull for back home was too big. I had my first kid, both my wife's family, my family are in Arizona, and so I go back to the chiropractor that I walked into the door, and I said I was curious, and I go, hey, I work for you now. That was my interview.
Remember me?
Yeah, no, in all seriousness. Hey, Jeff. You remember me? He's like, yeah, my gosh, how did it turn out? I go, dude, I graduated. I work for you now. What day do you want me to show up and start? And he was like, can we go to lunch first? And I was like, if you want to waste time, let's do that. So, dude, literally, we go have lunch, And I start working the next day, and he's like, we'll figure out the contract. I was like, I don't even care. I just want to get to work. And I ended up 2 years later taking out my first $1 million loan, buy him out. And that was my first clinic that I owned. That's it.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
And he was ready to go. So, hey, who would have known the timing there as well? But the key point is, like, you see the goal, you go after the goal, you achieve the goal.
Yeah.
That's freaking
just
awesome.
savage mentality the whole time. Like, hey, man, this is what I want, and I'm not going to, like, pussyfoot about it. Like, I work here, and I'm going to buy you out. And he was like, sounds like a good plan. Let's do that. It's like, cool. Like,
So let's talk about that for a second, because there's kind of a mentality behind that, right? Like, you didn't just sort of say, well, I'm going to fumble my way through this. I'm going to just sort of slack my way through this. It was, you have a life condition growing up that you're in all these sports. You take these sports to the highest level. You knew your financial situation at home, which wasn't great. So you knew you needed a scholarship. So you leveraged your skill sets on the field to get the scholarship. You do so well. You're just getting the degree, but you do so well, you end up with a contract in the NFL. You play in the NFL, sustain this crazy injury that, basically takes you out. You've got the multi-year contract. You walk, but you walk right into the next opportunity. You see that through, have your first child, go right back to, like, now you have the culmination of everything, and you're like, okay, next one here is, if I'm going to walk into this guy's office, I'm not just going to work for him the rest of my life. That's not my end goal. That's my first step towards the next step. And it's a mindset that is, I think people could learn a lot from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we go from there to he and I partnering up and opening up, a dozen more and buying and selling them. And then I buy them out completely, and then I start vertically integrating, just looking at, like, hey, man, I'm referring people out to ortho and to pain and to family and all these other places. So I end up just opening up a really large orthopedic place and bringing in ortho doctors and pain doctors and anesthesia groups and DME companies and everything you could do in the musculoskeletal side of the house. Like, if it had to do with a bone, joint, ligament, muscle, or whatever, like, I did it, I bought it, I owned it, managed it, whatever, and loved it. But my issue is that if I feel like I'm getting complacent, if I don't feel challenged, I become very uninterested very quick. And it's the pursuit of the challenge, which is terrible, because I could have a much easier life than I choose right now, but I think I'd be bored. And so I say, and along the way now, Sean, and I exited all that stuff in about 2019, I had been seeking my own challenges, Sealfit, Ironman, Alcatraz swims, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all these other things.
Let's go into those for a second, because again, I was alluding to a mindset, which is, we could spend hours and hours on how you're wired up here to say, like, that's how you didn't always know the future, but you knew that you were going to go headlong and headstrong into that future. You also had a hole, a void. You said it earlier. When you're done playing in the NFL, there's no more football. Mm-hmm. Yet, you've been training your whole life to be a high-caliber athlete. Mm-hmm. Tell me about some of these sports that you fill the void with, because I'm looking behind you. I see a trophy. I see the Ironman, etch. I remember, seeing a couple of things there. Yeah. Yep. And then take me into the first time you walked onto the grinder in Sealfit, because I think that's worth unpacking too.
Yeah, so the grinder was by accident, and very quick story of how I got here. So I'm unpacking the fact that I'm a doctor now. I'm not an athlete. I'm still working out and doing all this kind of stuff. And I actually was the triage doctor at the P.F. Chang's Rock and Roll Marathon, and I'm standing at the finish line. And as people finish, I'm like, you go to medical and you go get your medal, right? Doing this. Yeah. And what I'm seeing reminds me of what I had lost. Look at the people finishing. If you've ever been to a marathon and you're at the finish line, you're watching them, you see in that last half mile this, like, I'm about to do something like has been on my lifelong bucket list, and you're just like, dude, praise Jesus, like, bring me the power, like, oh my gosh, like, I get chills thinking about lifetime achievements like that. And I was like, I want that. That's the drug I want it right now. And I was like, so the next day I'm like, I'm signing up for a marathon. And I was like, what do I have to do? And they're like, you have to finish it in like 8 hours. I was like, I can walk that. That doesn't seem hard. what else is there? Somebody's like, do a triathlon. I was like, I don't have a bike and I don't know how to swim. They're like, figure it out. And I'm like, well, I'm sure I can. A lot of people do it. What's the hardest one? They're like, Ironman. I was like, boom. So my very first endurance thing I signed up for was Ironman Arizona, like 2005. I just didn't have a bike. Dude, I go to the gym and I try and figure out how to swim. Dude, I get in the pool and I'm like, there's this big lady next to me, like no disrespect to big people, and she's just like motoring through the pool, just swimming laps. And I was like, world-class athlete, out of shape soccer mom, I'm gonna crush this sport. Dude, I swim from one side of the pool to the other. I'm like, I can't breathe, can't feel my arms. I'm smoked. So I go get a coach.
By the way, folks, just for the record, it was a 25-meter pool, not a 50-meter pool.
Oh yeah.
So let's really clip the wings on that.
Yeah, most people could dive and just go underwater to the other side. Like, and I was like, I can't breathe. Didn't know whatever. So I get a coach and blah, blah. Long story short is I end up going on and doing a whole bunch of Ironman races and triathlons and all this other stuff and whatever. And it got to the point where I was like, I love it and it's hard, but it's not scary. So I'm like, what's on the, like, I would see that I have, hey man, you got an Ironman coming up in like 3 months. You need to get up at 3 a.m. and ride your bike. I'm like, I'll do it because I'm dedicated, but I'm not motivated on fear. There's no juice. And as a matter of fact, the last Ironman I did, and the reason it's my last one, is I'm sitting there getting ready to start, and I look at my heart rate monitor, and it was 68. I was beating it 68 beats in the water, treading as the cannon went off, and I was like,
you're not even fired up.
I'm not fired. I'm just doing this to do it. You know what I mean? Like it didn't was like, woo. And I like that, like, woo, that woo feeling. So I had done a triathlon in called the Super Frog or Super Seal in Coronado, and had won that, right? It's a half Ironman. And coming out of the water, the guy, and I'm not military, but the SEAL wearing all of his whites and all this stuff gives me this big plaque, and he's like, have you ever thought about being a Navy SEAL? I'm like, dude, everybody thinks about being a Navy SEAL. It'll be so badass. And he's like, you should check out Commander Mark Devine's program, Sealfit in Encinitas. I'm like, what's that? He's like, go up there, tell him I sent you, and tell him that you want to do Kokoro. And I was like, sounds good. Bro, I finish it, I drive up there, I walk in, and Alan's working at the front desk, right? You remember Alan?
Oh, yeah. Teenage, like, don't judge a book by its cover. This kid's just sort of rolling through life, waiting to kind of find his path. He's there to join the Navy. He's there to learn all the skill sets to join the Navy, to sharpen him up and become what he is today.
I have no idea what this is or isn't, but a man who I should respect and commanded my respect and attention and authority said, this is what you should do. And I went, good copy. And I got in my car with my award and drove to Encinitas. Never been to Encinitas before. Pull up at this place called US CrossFit Sealfit and walk in and go, I'm here to sign up for Kokoro. And Alan's like, are you East Coast or West Coast? And I go, West Coast, thinking I live in Arizona. And he's like, oh, sick, there's some other West Coast dudes that are working out over there. Maybe you know them. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He was assuming when I walked in that I was like a team guy. Because I just walked in, big, thick dude. I'm like, I'm here to register. Like as if I came up from Buds and was going to be an instructor, right?
He thinks you're part of the cadre. Got it.
He thinks I'm part of the cadre. And so once he figures it out, he's like, oh, my mistake. Hey, I don't really, here, give me your credit card. I'll take $1,000. And do you have an email? And I'll email you this and that. And so, dude, I sign up. And I don't know, 4 months later, I show up on deck for Kokoro class. I think it was 17, give or take, ballpark of 12, 17, somewhere in that range.
Just a couple after mine,
yeah,
5 or 6 later,
somewhere back then.
Later.
And I'm standing on the grinder, and I'm like, dude, these guys are all taking this serious. This is like fantasy camp. We're going to, I don't know, play in the water, maybe shoot guns, maybe jump out of a helicopter. I don't know, SEAL. Being a SEAL sounds pretty sick. This is fun.
Let's pause here because
this is
beautiful. This is beautiful. This is like 2011. There's no internet that's really serving knowledge on what the experience is that you're walking into. And that is so pure. And the only thing you had was a level of physical preparedness. You're fresh off of an Ironman. You're fresh off of some very endurance focused activities, which happen to be a little bit more applicable in that setting, unbeknownst to you. And all right, guys, what are we here to do? Eerily familiar, because when I did mine in 2010, Dude, I had no clue what I was walking into. I mean, I remember walking around, looking around, being like, "Hey, where do we sleep?" And guys are
totally.
and they're like,
"Where do I put my bags?" They're like, Shane Hyatt threw it, and I was like, "Dick, like, what's wrong with that guy? What a bad mood he's in." Like, I'm gonna go kick his ass. Had no idea, man.
I'm actually bigger than him.
Yeah, this bald dude. So I got another Shane Hyatt story, but so dude, you'll appreciate this. So I'm standing on the grinder, totally out of my element, like looking around. I'm like, everybody else here is like 5'8", 150 pounds, because there was a big contingency of guys that came from Naval Academy that were like 12 of them were going through that class, like 2 or 3 dudes that were like Marine lateral transfers, and like a PJ from Air Force, and then like me and this other old guy named John Rigamer, and Chris Smith walks up to me and he's like, "Hey man, I need to talk to you." And I was like, yeah.
And he says it just like that.
"Hey man, hey big fella, lean in, I need to talk to you." I said, "What's up?" He said, "You're in the wrong place." I was like, "Oh, I signed up, I didn't know. Am I in the wrong? I'm sorry. Like it seems, I feel like I'm in the wrong place. I don't know where to go." He's like, "You need to come with me. I need to hurry up and get you your money back. You signed up for the wrong thing. Look around. What do they look like?" I'm like, "They look like they're my kids." He's like, "Exactly. They're like 15, 20 years younger than you, 100 pounds lighter than you, and they're all going to go be Navy SEALs. And you are a broken old man from Gilbert, Arizona. You're just in the wrong place. Come with me." And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I start to walk with him. And the other people in the class start yelling, "No DOR." And I'm like, drop. I'm not drop. Now I'm confused. And then Chris is like, "Come with me." And they're like, "Stay here." And I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. And then hoses and grenades, boom. And it starts. And that was my start. And for the rest of the camp, for the next 3 days or whatever, every time they would say something like, "We're going to run to the top of that mountain," I was like, "Yeah, that's bullshit. I'm a civilian. There's no way we're going to run to the top of that mountain. This is one of those mental games, and we're going to run like 100 yards, and then they're going to say, okay, we just want to see if you can do it. So I'll just go hard, and because it's just all jokes." And the reality was, none of it was jokes. Like, it was super serious. Like, we went hard in the paint all day, all the time. And that was it.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So,
yeah.
So this was kind of a neat moment. And for those listening, one of the reasons Derek and I are talking, aside from the fact that we've been like friends since that moment, that was my first time meeting you, was I was coaching Sealfit with Glenn Doherty, with Bub. And we got the weekend shift of Kokoro that weekend. It was Shane Hyatt, Dan Cirillo, Chris Smith, all former SEALs, with the exception, I think, of Danny Miller and myself. We were the 2 civilian coaches that were allowed at that time to participate as Sealfit coaches. And we had special shirts that said coach, that didn't have the trident emblem on them because, they shouldn't. And everyone else had that on there. And there was it was this massive imposter syndrome / badge of honor to be invited to stand next to Glenn and Taco and administer so much pain and suffering to paying clientele who were there to see what they were made of. And the only criteria as a coach that we had was like, hey, does everyone like you? Do they want to be around you? Have you been through the experience? And do you have are you the type of person they want to be around? And ultimately Mark Devine was the ultimate anointer of that. And hey, here I was enjoying that. The problem when you're a former NFL player walking into a Kokoro setting, a Sealfit camp setting, is that you are literally towering above everybody else, which you can't help it. It just puts a giant target square on your back, chest, head, everywhere. All we could do was fuck with you all weekend long and try to break you. And once we found out you used to play in the NFL, that just sweetened the deal for us.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I know, dude. I the first time that we really met, I think you came on shift, if I'm guessing, like Saturday morning, maybe something like that. Like, you picked up right after the ball shift, and you were like, you and Glenn were like, all right, go get a log, get a team together, and we're gonna go take it to the beach. And for people to understand that, like, it's a 300-pound log, and it's a very long walk up and down hills to take it to the beach to do the workout. Like,
just to get to the beach. Yeah, the beach is about a mile away, maybe a little bit less. And it's a very big, heavy log. You need about 6 people to carry the log. It helps tremendously if the 6 people carrying the log are roughly of the same height.
Totally. So that's not the case. And so like I'm shouldering this huge log, and Glenn walks up, like, and we're going like up the hill. So we're heading like north, and I don't know where the turn is to go to Moonlight, but like we're heading north out of the gym. And I remember it specifically. And he was like, hey man, and he just starts having a conversation with me like we're on a ski lift or something. Like, hey man, how you doing? Where are you from? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, this is a cool dude. And I'm like, oh yeah, and you're a Navy SEAL. I'm super enamored by the fact that he's a SEAL. Like in my mind, like football players think SEALs are you know, like everybody else does. Like you're Jason Bourne in real life. I'm meeting a real life Jason Bourne. And at that point in time, I didn't know any SEALs. It was still all mythology and video game. And he's just having a conversation with me, and some of the other coaches start busting on me. They're like, stop talking and da 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 da. And Glenn looks at him and goes, if this dude can carry that whole log up this hill and hold this conversation with me, let's just let that happen. And I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So dude, I'm like, me and this dude named Glenn are super tight friends now. Dude, we get to the beach, and you guys put us through all gnarliness, and my hands are freezing. It's like, I don't know, 5 a.m, whatever. And this thing called an MRE, which I've never even heard of, comes out. And they're like, it's breakfast time. And Glenn is like, you play in the NFL, and takes mine and makes me like, and keeps throwing it in the air and making me run routes to try and catch it. And then he's like, you can't catch for shit. And then he rips it apart and says, and just starts throwing the pieces everywhere. And now there's like, I don't even know what an MRE is, but there's pieces of food that I'm supposed to be eating. Everybody else is sitting in the rocks eating. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to go gather up these things, but my hands are too cold to open anything. And he's like, time's up. You got to eat when you can eat. Moving. And I was like, what? Moving? What is happening right now? I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. You know what I mean? So I was just like,
this guy was my friend, and now he's being a dick.
We were friends, and now he's mean to me. So dude, you guys put us in this thing called like boat races, but with the logs. And there was one race towards the end where it was like, pays to be a winner, and you get like 5 minutes to sit down. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm get 5 minutes? So I told my team, I was like, just keep up with me. So as soon as we started, I took my log and rammed the other team. Wham! Went around the buoy and came back, and I was like, we win. And they're like, you can't do that. I was like, nobody said I couldn't do that. It was there and back, and I just wiped them out. Not my problem. I won. I get to sit down now. And Glenn was like, you absolutely do. In that cold-ass water. and just on goes the fest, bro.
Fine print.
Yeah,
you know, those things happen. And Glenn, I mean, watching him turn it on, like really turn it on in the moment, I'm always, because I grew up with this cat, so I know like happy, nice Glenn. I've only seen mean Glenn a couple of times, but I'm watching him just like turn the heat up in those moments. I'm like, oh, I'm like studying. I'm like taking notes on just how to get under someone's skin and absolutely unravel them and just mess up their mental state and then rebuild it, right? Because a huge valuable part of this is the rebuild. And you found a loophole. You pissed him off because that you didn't break the rules, you bent them. Mm-hmm. But you bent them for a purpose. And then he's like, okay, I'll bend him right back on you. Yeah, you get to sit for 5 minutes over there in the water where it's nice and cold.
Yeah.
You go through that whole experience, and somewhere along the way, and this is the beauty of this is my sales pitch for anyone who's searching for that next combination of fear, accomplishment, that Misogi, challenge in their lives. Somewhere approaching the third day, Friday through Saturday, somewhere in there's this gelling that happens. And all of a sudden these coaches that are so fucking mean and they're so fucking hard on you, but you get these little glimmers from them and you really can't make sense of it. Somewhere in there you become fortified against all of that. Mm-hmm. And watching you on Sunday was a pure treat because we wanted to break you. And it wasn't personal. We didn't know you, but you had a target on your back. Everyone did, for that matter. To be clear, everyone did. But some folks stand out more than others, and they get a disproportionate amount of the attention, which means you actually got more of your money's worth. You actually got a better paid experience.
Dollar. It's like how I golf, saw the whole course. Right?
Exactly.
Dude, funny story, Sean, that I don't know if you remember. But you guys had us do an evolution where we ran on the beach from one lifeguard tower to the next, swam out past the breakers, swam, parallel, and then back in, right? And one of the most badass female athlete, just tough human beings, was in our class. And I think she went, she was soft army, and she went that direction. But we were swimming with boots on, and she wasn't really a water person. So I remember, I was doing Ironman at the time, so I was like, oh man, I could swim in the ocean. This is great. I love it. I'm having fun. Of course it's hard. And I come in, and I was like, hey, one of our people is being sucked out. They're in a current, they're rip undertow, whatever you guys call it, rip current, whatever.
Rip.
And
yeah, she was in a rip.
Surfers were waving to you guys, and you and Glenn are both sitting there fully dressed. And I go, hey man, somebody's out there drowning. And Glenn looks at you and goes, Rochambeau. And you're like, shit. And he's like, see you, Sean. And he just full kit, dude, right into the water. And he just turned around and he's like, sucks to lose. And he just sat there and we started talking again. And he just, Sean's off on a swim.
I literally swam, 25 meters out. The whole goal of that exercise for just to protect my ass as a coach was that no one was ever supposed to go past waist deep water. The goal was waist deep because you can swim in waist deep water. So you're always supposed to be inside the break. But this little girl, she was a fire plug. She was a monster athlete, but she wasn't very tall. She wasn't very big. And ping, and her teammates totally abandoned her. They're all supposed to be together. And all of a sudden, she's just drifting out, and they're all just kind of standing there well, they've been up for 48 hours, and they're just completely deers in headlights. They don't know what to do. You were the only one that had the wherewithal to point it out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll go get her because I lost the Rochambeau. Damn it. Swim out, grab her, hook, bring her in. She was so appreciative that I, air quote, saved her. I mean, she was going to be fine, but, I pulled her back in. That at the end of the camp, she made it through. She graduated. She made it through Kokoro. She bought me, she knew I like beer. She literally bought me a subscription to beer. And then every month, a 6-pack of beer would be mailed and show up as a gift of appreciation for 6 months or something. It was super cool.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
But yes, I remember that story, and I remember losing and having to paddle out. And I remember being like, oh yeah. And we're like, yeah, it would have been really bad, actually, in hindsight, if we hadn't caught that and she had drifted out 50 yards and then, because, we don't want to draw any unnecessary attention to ourselves. And let's call this out. We were operating on state beaches in the city of Encinitas with 0 permits for years. It was glorious.
Full black camo, full black kit, boots. We looked like the militia out there.
In today's day and age, in 2024, if you were to march down the beach in full camis and logs, doing those evolutions while everyone's out trying to enjoy their beach day, people would lose their freaking minds. It would never happen in 2024. But back in 2010, 11, 12,
it's different, bro.
Get away with some stuff. Different world. But you made it through. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was the start of the chapter that you're in today. I feel like that, to me, your graduation from Kokoro, and then you joined the coaching cadre. You did your mandatory one internship, and then you dove headlong into the role of coach. Tell me about that, because ultimately it leads to the faction, and I want to talk about that next. Sure.
So it was actually, I wish it was one, but I got lucky that at the end of that Kokoro camp, Glenn pulled me aside and gave me an Honor Man award, and I think it was really cool. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, and whatever. And he's like, so where are you at with your buds process and your billet? And then I'm like, I'm not going to buds. I'm not being a SEAL. And he was kind of doing the whole is that a thing you ever thought about? And I was like, no, I'm a doctor. I live in Arizona. I got 3 kids. It's not a thing. And there, Mark was like, well, I don't really know what to do with you. Well, why don't you just come back then? Why don't you come back and just hang out? If you want to come back and hang out, come back and hang out. So for 2 years on my dime, so I came to 8 camps, because back then we were running 4 camps a year, give or take. Yeah. I came back, and I was not a coach, and I was not paid, and I paid my own way, and I had no role or responsibility other than, I was sweeping the shitter, cleaning the sand off the grinder in between evolutions, and bringing coffee to dudes like you and Glenn and everybody else. I did that for 2 years because wanted the camaraderie of that group again, right? The locker room I left in the NFL, like when you play at a high level, someday you get off the train, whether it's military, whether it's sports, whatever. But you get off the train, you're still cool to everybody, but that train's rolling. You're just not on it anymore. And like, yeah, you miss the games and you miss whatever goes with it, and the fame, blah, 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 whatever. But what you miss is like the community and the camaraderie of dudes that you're like bleeding and grinding and sweating with, that you know, like they could walk up to you in the dark and you know exactly who it is. And like you fight all the time, but like heaven forbid somebody try and like fight inside your circle that's not part of the crew. You know, it's a gang. You're basically a gang. And I saw the gang at Sealfit, and I saw that the SEALs had the same thing that the pro athlete locker rooms did. And I was like, I need that, and I can't get back to the pros. But I can get back to this right here. So for 2 years on my own dime, I just kept showing up. And eventually, guys were like, hey, do you want to help me with this shift? Hey, do you want to cover this shift? Do you want to help out with this evolution? Why don't you cover this evolution? And then I just kept showing up, which is part of what I coach. Like, half of success is like, just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. And, you know, I ended up running, I think about 27 of the Kokoros as like a pretty senior cadre in charge of a lot of stuff. And then a lot of the stuff, 20Xs and all the other stuff we did outside of there. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you became part of Mark's inner circle, and you know, Mark Devine is like a classic visionary, and is always conceptualizing new items and opportunities. I remember one of the more exciting ones for us was trying to come up with a unique twist on the obstacle course race, the OCR. And like we went out to Vale Lake and we sat down and we took notes for like 2 hours, and like no one was paid to do that. But we believed in the community and the energy that we could all draw from each other. And it's like there's a handful of SEALs and then you and myself and a couple other guys. And we're able to like pull this energy together. And the idea never got off the ground. And that's almost secondary to the idea of gaining inspiration of community, that locker room, like the locker room that you left behind. And that's what drove you, you know, in different chapters along the way. And during that, you formed a phenomenal partnership with Dan Cirillo. And you know, one of the most legendary Sealfit coaches of all time, Taco, you know, longstanding Navy SEAL, is no longer with us. I wish he was, because goddamn, I could fill hours on a podcast just letting him just tear
give him
open
the
a
mic
rant.
and walk away. Yeah,
that's it. One
For
question:
sure.
What's it like to be you? Amazing.
You can never be me. I'm a Spartan. Spartans walk with Spartans. You're a piece of shit worm. You're lucky I'm even talking to you. Yeah. I love you too, Taco.
Where did it all start? So, but you know, again, iron sharpens iron. You're in this amazing community, and so many people have had life-changing experiences going through Sealfit, going through Kokora, walking through those doors, and then beyond, turning steel, like the faction camps that happened along the side. And, you know, there's still a few kind of remnants of that today. But you also started working administration in hospitals, in larger clinics. You sort of took the helping others through the chiropractic clinic and escalated that to a massive, you know, career evolution. Take me from that into the faction, because I really want to spend some time learning about that, because it's been a long time coming, but at the same time, I feel like it's just, you know, it's in this great molding phase right now.
Yeah. So I do the chiropractic thing, vertically integrate, builds a lot of things, and along the way, I'm still knee seeing patients. Even though I'm building it, and I own it, I run it, and manage it, and staff it, and do all these things, I'm still seeing patients, because that's where my passion was, which is like what we're doing right now. I like to be right here, eye to eye with somebody, and give my all, and watch them achieve things, and like that's where I get satiety, right? Like what fills my cup? What filled my cup was what I could do. What fills my cup is watching other people do it and being part of that. And that evolves into, I was seeing so many people that both my shoulders finally gave out, so I had both rotator cuffs rebuilt. And it made me learn how to be an administrator and be able to run a clinic, but like I can't be the guy adjusting you anymore because I can't use my arms. Yeah. So I bring staff in. I'm training them, and that goes well. And I get an opportunity to exit from all this stuff because I want to go into coaching. And the first coaching client I had was set up by Taco, which was a company called American Addiction Centers. He said, hey man, they got these hospitals and it's a total shit show. Nurses won't talk to doctors. Doctors won't work with social workers. Everybody hates everybody. It's a $100 million organization, and they're getting ready to go bankrupt because they can't pull it together. So, dude, I go, yeah, man, I'm going into coaching. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a big-time consultant. And I go up and meet with their owner, and we're sitting at the table, and we're like 5-10 minutes, like literally 10 minutes in, and he's like, what's your angle? What do you do? Tacos told me about you. And I tell him, he goes, hey, I was going to hire you as a consultant, and that's still on the table, but what if I just say, go be the CEO of my hospital? What is that going to take? And I was like, well, I've never done this is mental health and substance abuse. I don't know anything about it, and literally don't know anything about it. And I was like, I don't know anything about that space. I know how to work teams. I know how to fix people. I know how to build processes. I know how to coach and mentor, but I don't know anything about the process. And the guy's like, it doesn't matter. You don't understand. You're missing it. We need a leader. And leaders are just leaders. So I'll teach you what this is, but just be a leader. So, dude, I say, okay, let's do it. I haven't done it. Sounds scary. Again, attracted. BHAG. So I live in Phoenix, and I fly up for the next 4 years of my life every Monday and fly back every Thursday to Vegas to run this hospital. And a very quick, like, how did it work when I started? And this is yet another positive. Is the first day I walk into the hospital, it was so disjointed they didn't expect me. So I show up in a 3-piece suit trying to look like whatever you would think a hospital CEO, doctor, like, dude, striped with a bar going through my tie, watch, like.
You did it all.
I had shoes, socks that mattered, like everything. And I walk in and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I think I work here now. And they're like, we don't know who you are. Here's your office. There's a key. HR was expecting you. I walk in. They're like, here's your computer. I don't know how to log you in. We haven't paid the IT bill and XYZ. Maybe next week we'll get you logged in. So here's your keys to your office. Good luck. Like hundreds of staff, hundreds of patients, $100 million book of business. And I'm like, that was my onboard. Like literally what I just said was probably longer than what I actually got. So I said, okay, well, I can't just sit in the office, so I'm going to go walk around. So I tour the facility, and I'm like, this place is dirty, like trash, cigarettes, everything everywhere. So the next day I walk in, still dressed to the nines. I walk in, grab a bag, grab gloves, and just go outside and start picking up trash because I don't know what to do, but I see something I can do. I start picking up trash. I'm putting cigarette butts in a bag, and the former CEO that got fired that I took a spot drives by, pulls out his camera, and takes a bunch of pictures and texts it to every single member of the staff. Dude, you guys are such a piece of shit. Look what's happened to your company. I'm so glad I got out. You're going under. You got your new CEO. He's a joke. He's out there picking up trash. What a loser. You guys are a disgrace. Blah, 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 blah.
I didn't know anything about that. That's how he took it.
That's how he took it.
He didn't gain a shred of inspiration to say, wow, look at this guy who's willing to just take action. Look at this guy who sees a problem and is creating a solution. Wow, that's interesting because I.
But you're cut from a different cloth, right? So and we're similar. So like the next day I walk in and there's like 25 people at my office door and I was like, oh, am I late for a meeting? I don't even know what the schedule is around here. I've met none of you, right? I don't know anybody except the cafeteria guys because like rule number 1, always get in with cafeteria guys. And they're like, hey, I just want to shake your hand and welcome you and let you know like I can follow you. And I was like, okay. And like I was like, maybe that's just the culture here. And then somebody's like, I'm so sorry this picture came out about you. And I was like, what is that? And they're like, yeah, this is what everybody's talking about right now. And I was like, that's me. I'm picking up cigarettes in the parking lot. And they're like, yeah. And that's the best leadership example I've seen in my life. Whatever you want. Here, I work in this department. I will do it for you right here, right now. And that's what started it. Fast forward 3 years, 4 years later, headhunter comes along and says, I got a bigger opportunity, a bigger hospital. I go do it. Fast forward that a year later, one of our friends, David Powell, had a nice exit and was struggling with where to go in life and purpose. And it re-shook me a little bit, made me reevaluate my purpose. And I realized I'm not chasing passion anymore. I'm just in the current of comfort. I get this massive $500,000 paycheck on a W-2 with a bunch of bonus, but I don't do anything with patience. All I'm doing is like telling people like we need to cut costs here and save money here, and I'm playing for shareholders and stock, right? I'm not playing for patients anymore. I'm just playing because it's publicly traded, and I'm playing for the shareholders. That's who's my boss now. And so I walk in, I'm like, I just don't do this anymore. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is not the job I do. And they're like, well, here's some more money. I'm like, that was solved for a month, but then I'll be back to zero. So again, jump out of the airplane with no parachute, and was the spawn of Faction Foundation. So I call guys like you, and I call guys that get it, And I said, hey, Sean, I quit my job. And I think your comment was, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So like,
good. Tell me more.
You're like, dude, awesome. Good for you. Like, I was waiting for you to, like, what are you going to, and it was like, oh man, that's so cool. Good for you. What are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to get back in front of human beings again. And I don't know what it looks like yet, but that's what I'm going to do. And sitting down and sorting out what I want to do. Do I want to be a doctor again? And I said, you know what? I have amassed the secret sauce of how to be successful in the roadmap from the NFL to being a doctor, to being a CEO, to being a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, and a business, and all of this stuff. And I just want to share it with go-getters that want to get unstuck from average. That's it. Like, yep. I don't need to make the tip of the spear sharper. I want go-getters that are like, because there's two things we can control in this world: attitude, effort, right? Everything else is out of your control. But you can show up with your attitude that you choose, and you can choose what effort you want to put in. It's two things. Everything else is bullshit. So you give me a human being that goes, I got attitude and effort, and I want to not be average anymore, then I am the solution. Because I have the blueprint from every single one of these places to give you the actions, the mindset, the follow through, the goal, the compass heading, the roadmap, the Google Maps. Here's where you are. Here's where you want to be. Here's how we're going to get there. And it's wildly successful.
It's awesome. I mean, this is fresh. This is 2024. Derek Price.
We started taking clients like 8 weeks ago. It's that fresh.
Yeah. No. I mean, we were having a couple conversations around nutrition supplements, and then some app stuff, base stuff. And we're always pinging ideas back and forth. And I always get really fired up. And it's one of my secret sauces for me is like I get really energized when someone comes to me with a problem that needs a solution, an opportunity that needs assessing, and I'm sort of comfortably on the outside of it. But I have a great emotional buy-in when it's someone that I like and someone that I have respect for, or there's just a good energy that comes from those sessions. And I pull that inspiration and apply it at Bubs. And when you came with that, I'm like, wow, you're walking away from literally millions of dollars in annual salary or in salary over years, like a very cush position, but you did it. Like you saw it through. It'll be there if you ever want to go back to it because your track record speaks for itself. So it's not like that door's closed. You just said, nah, I'm good for now. And there's a certain comfort in that, but that's not really where you live, in the comfort zone. So, okay, my kids are at an age where they're pretty well established. You've got this resume and track record. You've built this a nest egg, but really that's not what it's about as much as that challenge and that opportunity. And you do have this roadmap.
Yeah.
Like you literally have gone through a successful career in the NFL. You've gone through starting in a chiropractic field and owning clinics and then solving a major problem and opportunity in that with combining the orthopedic practices and putting it all under one roof. Like there's so much and so many layers to that. And you go, well, if I just write all this down, and if I have friends who have an exit, don't know what to do next, and I'm not just going to point them to go do an Ironman. Like that's temporary. Here's your next challenge. It's more like no.
Yeah.
What are you missing? Where's the opportunity? Attitude.
I just
check.
took the
Effort,
infrastructure
check.
of the stuff that we had. Like I have a plan, a playbook, I have a coach and a team, and I think what's a little bit unique about me is I believe in the power of team. Like it doesn't have to be the Derek Price show. So I create environments and groups of people that where iron sharpens iron, to your point, where we can like ping off each other. Of course, I'll choreograph and I'll run it from the front, but like I'm interested in like other points of view, right? But you have to have a starting point. So I go back to my medical side and do a deep assessment. Like here's where you are, because Google Maps needs two things. It just needs where are you, where are you trying to go. There's only two things it needs, and it'll fill in the gap. So I start with the where are you, and I sit down and go, where do you want to go? And then I build the gap in between using the stuff that we use in the pro sports world, the stuff we use in being a doctor, the stuff you use in the boardrooms. And dude, it's funny, man. I still have people that are like, oh, I don't need coaching. I'm like, do you think the NFL spends hundreds of millions a year on coaching because it doesn't work, or that executives at the top level don't spend $1 billion a year to get 1% better? LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, like you should call them and tell them they're wasting their time. Like, what do you mean you don't need coaching? I get coached to this day. I had my coaching session with my coach this morning, right? When you're uncoachable, you're done. Whatever your plateau is, whatever you're done, cool, be done. And quite honestly, The world doesn't need everybody to be awesome, right? I wish it did, but it doesn't require it. Sean, if everybody worked as hard as you did, how hard would it be for you to be successful? Right. So you know what I'm saying? When you think about that, you're like, oh, I'm kind of glad that I do what I do. So I really only look for, like, if you can give me attitude and effort and you're a go-getter, I will take you where you want to go. But like, if I get on a call and I have to like pull you over the line, hey man, go do your own thing. Go do your own thing. I'll be here later. Like,
yeah. Well, you need that buy-in. I mean, if someone's going to open the door and say, okay, I want the Faction Foundation experience. I want to open that door. You don't open it part way. Kick that thing open. Lay out all your vulnerabilities. Lay out all your shortcomings. Lay out all your opportunities for growth. Glenn used to say this. He used to always he would make these most monumental screw-ups, mostly in relationships. And, I'll just lay that out there. And he'd come back from it, and I'd be like, Glenn, what'd you do? And he's like, well, there was this girl. And I'm like, uh-oh. But he would have the ability to see what he chose wrong, where he should have done right. And he had this acronym. He said, oh, AFOG. I'm like, AFOG? No. He's like, yeah, AFOG, man. Woo, big time. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, another fucking opportunity for growth.
I love it.
Opportunity for growth. AFOG.
I'm going to steal that.
AFOG. And Glenn would lay out the AFOGs, man. And I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that one thing with that one girl, with this other girl was over. Whatever his thing was. I'm just like, good AFOG moment, man.
Yeah.
And he would have those in relationships, in life, professionally, and these are mistakes you have to make to learn from the mistakes, and then you become a better human. But you got to lay those things out there because we all have our shortcomings. I've got mine, and I know it. So I'm watching what you're doing, and in the last couple of years, I've joined a couple business owner groups and business groups. And I joined them very reluctantly. Here I am, the guy who used to coach Sealfit, be a part of it, like working in management. And I don't know why I had a resistance to it, but I did. And I caught the resistance. And I'm like, what do I got to lose? All right. Fuck that attitude. Like, go in there and try it out. So I joined Bill Walton's group, the San Diego Sports Innovators. And I started going to these small meetings that I was invited to. And it's just the CEO peer group. And so there's like 8 to 10 people sitting around a table, and everyone just starts laying their shit out on the table, like pretty bare. And I'm like, wow, these are total strangers, and they're really opening up about personality. They talk about their personal lives, what's going well, what's not, their professional lives, what's going well, what's not. And there's a level of vulnerability that was brought to me, and I'm like, oh, I can be vulnerable. Okay, but geez, it just never occurred to me. I thought everything I just had to put out there was perfect. And man, turns out we're not all solving unique problems. It turns out there's a lot of commonality in what we go through. And you know this because you're helping folks with it. But if you bring a good attitude and you're willing to put in the effort, it's amazing what you can accomplish, man. I'm really excited for Faction Foundation. So tell me a little bit more about the clientele. Like, you're 8 weeks in, you've got some clients. Give me the persona around them, because there's going to be some people that listen to this that are going to look you up afterwards. I know that.
Good. You can look me up at thefactionfoundation.com. But I tell people, you can go to my website and you'll see my window dressing and the bullshittery of the world. Go to my Instagram page and run it back 10 years from ago. See who I was before I opened this business. Because there's no shortage of coaches in this world selling smoke in place of substance. And you get all these guys that are like, I'm doing this and this and this. I'm like, why'd your Instagram personal page start the day your business started? Let me see your life. Who were you before this? Who were you 10, 15, 20 years ago? You know what I mean? What does your marriage look like 30 years ago? I have pictures of my wife on that from the day the Instagram started, et cetera. So if a good client for me is anybody who's willing to put in work and to do a deep dive into their self and willing to take, coaching on board and put into action. Anybody that has that go-getter mentality. I hate high achievers and all the Instagrammy words that people use, and scale this and scale that. Listen, if you're a go-getter and you feel that your efforts are not matching up with your output and your result, then you're stuck in average. Now, average is a frame of mind. I was an average tight end in the NFL. I was probably a better tight end than everybody listening to this podcast and would be considered by them elite, NFL player. So you take stock of where you are. So average isn't a derogatory term. Sean, you may have been an average snowboarder at an elite level of snowboarding. But to me, you're a snowboard god, right? So,
yeah. And I was in my peer group, I was totally average. Totally average. Like,
but better than everybody else on planet Earth minus like 50 dudes, right? So,
no, but I only cared about the 50 dudes.
Exactly. So a client for me is if you have the attitude, you're a go-getter, you want the plan playbook, you like the team camaraderie, you miss it, you wish you were still on that train to some degree, iron sharpens iron, and you're ready to have people hold your shit to task. Case in point, we're on a huddle call the other day, a guy shows up. So I wrote a book, you get a book, and we gamify how to earn points through intention, and it's what's important to you, and I'll get into that later. But this guy shows up and he's like, yeah, man, I didn't score very many points in fitness because I was on the road and I was traveling in and out of hotels, blah, 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 blah. And another dude goes, hey, Derek, can I say something real quick? So my group is doctors, lawyers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, a bunch of SEALs, a bunch of former pro athletes, and then moms and pops. And I don't give a shit what your title was. If you show up with attitude and effort, like, I'll take you. I don't care who you are.
That's awesome.
And this other dude goes, hey, man, can I jump in? I'm like, yeah, of course. He goes, I'm gonna save the guy's name. Hey, Luke, 2 questions. Did your hotel, you stayed in the hotel? Yeah. Did your hotel have a floor? Yeah. Did it have gravity? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to run back on how you didn't get your workout in. And he's like, yeah, I don't see it. He's like, I'm going to go through that again. Did you have a floor and gravity? Yeah. Why aren't you doing push-ups and squats? And he was like, I didn't even think about that. Noted. That dude has never missed a point since then. Because the group is like, if you show up and bullshit, then save the money and just go lie to people. But if you want to make change, listen, change ain't comfortable, Sean. Change is not comfortable. There is no easy path to change. So I say,
but that guy, that Luke, like took it as a learning moment, AFOG,
Absolutely.
A moment for growth. And he's like, oh God, I hadn't considered that. He had his own barriers up. I don't have a hotel gym. I'm out of my comfort zone. Therefore, I can't do this thing. And all of a sudden, his mind just got expanded.
Totally.
And that's it. Like, I remember when I worked at Quicksilver, I was at DC Shoes, and we used to fly this 2 years in a row. We used to fly to Lyon, France, and it was the same flight from San Diego all the way to Lyon, France, because that's where our snowboard factory was. And I would get off the plane. I would not get my bags. I would get my bags. I would then leave my bags, and I would lace up my running shoes at the airport. And flying in, I saw all this farmland around, and I was like, I can run a route around that. Awesome. I can get a workout in. So I would try and kick the jet lag immediately, lace up my shoes, go for a run, like, put in 5-6 miles, whatever I could do on just what I saw flying in. And then I'd always know the airport's over there, so no matter what, just go back to the airport and then grab my bags and go to the hotel room and then be exhausted. But then I knew the meetings were the next day, so get up and, you're ready to go. But, get that deposit in no matter what. Find
as simple as that sounds, as simple as that sounds, you just used the word common, average, same word, synonyms, right? If you don't want to be average or you don't want to be common, you do what? Uncommon things. So it would be uncommon for somebody to land on an international flight, put their bags down, and go for a run. But if you want to be that guy, then you got to do the shit that guy's willing to do. And that's what you did. You're an uncommon human being, and that's why you're successful, and that's why you're who you are. And you're not an average dude, because you don't do average stuff.
Yeah. And I think even then, I appreciate those words, and I know that I can benefit from what Faction Foundation is doing. I know that I could benefit with a level up, and I don't think I suffer from complacency, but how would I know? If I'm in complacency, then I need to be gut checked. You don't know. So there's some magic in that, and I would encourage anyone listening to this to take a look at yourself. Are you in complacency? It's okay. Call it out, though, and then if you go I'm really good with complacency, I really like complacency. Cool, man, not for you.
Not for you.
But if you look at complacency and say, God, I'm freaking bored, or this just isn't as exciting. These are some dull days. How can I get more out of these days? Maybe if I try a session with Derek and his team, I might hate it. are going to push me so far out of my comfort zone, my complacency zone, that I'm going to run for the hills. But then again, maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, man. Just here's my ask. Book a 10, 15-minute call with me. Let's talk, right? And let's just start there. There's no commitment to it. It's nothing. Let's just talk and let's see if A, if I can help you with your problem, and B, if I'm a good solution and fit for you, and we jive together. Because if we don't, cool, I'll refer you somewhere else. Right? I don't need every client in the world. I need the ones that we're going to work with. But you know, what I find most common, Sean, is that I have people that they try so hard and they bring attitude and effort, and they're like, it's like being stuck in the mud, and like the hammer is down on the accelerator and the wheels are going wah, and they're like, dude, last year I was stuck here, this year I'm stuck here, I'm still stuck here, something isn't catching, right? Like, how do I go into four-wheel drive? How do I get out of this? Like, I'm working my ass off and like I'm making the same money, and my wife is still in the same situation, and my kids are still off, and I'm not leading my life through the faith that I subscribe to. Whatever, we look at the whole thing. This is not just a business thing. It's a holistic life move. So if you want to level up regardless of where you are, take action, book a call. That would be an uncommon move. Average would be to listen and be like, I'll think about it, and then move on. That's average.
Yeah. I heard this podcast. I forgot who the guy's name was. It's Derek Price, folks. And I'll come back to it. Well, the good news is podcasts tend to live in perpetuity, and I get to put all this information in the show notes, and then folks that are going to get peppered with a bunch of Instagram posts between you and I will get a little bit more evidence of
Absolutely.
why they should take those steps forward. And we're not talking about Sealfit or playing in the NFL here. We're talking about your life. And isn't that worth living at the highest level? I mean, isn't it? Glenn would say, drive it like you stole it. I would say, die young as late as possible. Either way, if you're going to do that, you might as well sharpen that iron up a little bit.
Yeah. Challenge yourself, do hard shit, or just be comfortable being average. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not for everybody. The world needs average players. Yeah.
But you're not looking for those average clients. Like, you're looking for folks that are stuck in the mud. You're looking for folks that they have the attitude, they have the effort. They're just like they haven't punched through that wall yet. So,
regardless of where that wall is.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for joining us today. And go back to your social media and your foundation. If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where can they find you? Like, where can they find Derek Price on social and all the things?
Cool. www.thefactionfoundation.com is the webpage, and I would go to official.derekprice is my Insta. It was Derek Price my whole life, and now my daughter is like, let me take over your social media. So it's now official.derekprice, whatever. But all discoverable. And here's what I say is, like, if you're looking for coaches, don't roll back a month or 2 months to what they're selling you today. Roll back and see who they were 5, 6, 10 years ago before they started selling their wisdom. Make your decision.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's good advice. Do your homework, right? If they're going to take advice from you, vet you out.
Don't buy the gimmick, man. Everybody's got more money than me and does sexier Instagram ads. Buy reality, not branded.